Well, hey there, everybody, and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, and welcome to yet another timely, lively, and informative ball publishing webinar. I'm Chris Beytes. I'm editor of Growertalks and Green Profit magazines and e-newsletter Acres Online, and I'm going to be your, shall I say, host for the next 50 minutes or so as we tackle today's topic. Well, you see it right there on your screen, choosing and using propagation media. I tell you, whether you're an experienced propagator looking for a refresher, and I've checked the names on the list, checked them twice in fact, and there's a bunch of you out there, or you're brand new to propagating your own plants, today's webinar will have something for you. Now, as usual, and I keep swearing I got to fix this, I am not the expert on the topic, but I have the man who is. He is Vijay Rapaka, Dr. Vijay Rapaka, Corporate Grower Research Manager for Oasis Grower Solutions. Vijay, are you there, my friend?
Yes, I'm here, Chris.
Beautiful. Now, I said here. Where is here? Where are you broadcasting from today?
From Kent, Ohio.
Kent, Ohio. And how are things? Are they Christmassy there yet? Or is it like a summer day in Miami?
No.
Miami, Ohio, of course.
It got pretty Christmassy over the last week, and we had some rain showers, so all the snow went off, but it's looking pretty good.
Beautiful. Okay, I'll ask you, make sure you're close to the mic so everybody can hear. Of course, who am I? Well, you know me. I'm broadcasting live from the high atop the ball publishing broadcast studios. Oh, I meant to mention the very opening slide. I mentioned your son's birthday. His name is Luke. Is that correct?
That is correct.
How old is he today?
He is 9 years old.
9 years old, and we're throwing I bet he's the only 9-year-old ever to get a webinar for his birthday. Anyway, all right. Now I've already got one person who Kim. I know Kim can't hear me. She says she's not getting any sound. I hope everybody else is, but for Kim and anyone who's not, read this. I'll give her a second to do so. In fact, I'm even going to type in here, Kim, read the slide. There we go. So, and hopefully Kim will get the audio hooked up, and that'll be that problem solved. Now, of course, we've got to thank our special sponsor, Oasis Grower Solutions, who puts the free in free webinar. Thank you, Oasis. As we go along, if you've got questions for Vijay, type them into either the chat area or the Q&A area. I'll check either one as we go along. If you're on topic to what Vijay's talking about, I'll tackle them right then. I'll shoot them out to Vijay, and he'll hopefully answer them. Or I'll save them to the end, and we'll even provide some contact information if you've got something that's just too technical to handle in a short webinar. And lastly, if you want to relive this webinar, share it with coworkers, your boss, your employees, or if you have to leave for some reason, fear not, because the webinar will be archived probably within an hour or so of being finished at growertalks.com/webinars. So that's all housekeeping. Vijay, you ready to take it away?
Yes.
All right, it's all yours.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it very much. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are. My name is Vijay Rapaka, and I work for Smithers Oasis Company. I've been here for a little over 9 years. Actually, it'll be 10 years in January. So yeah, time is flying pretty quick. So today, actually, we're going to talk about the propagation media, and its propagation is not tough. I mean, at one time or the other, probably if you're a hydroponic grower, you might have grown your lettuce in the concrete cracks. Or if you're a ornamental grower, maybe you have grown in the petunias on the sidewalk. Come on, be honest, I think, right? We all have done that. Again, probably not on purpose. So what I'm trying to say is propagation is not hard. But when it comes to the efficiency, when it comes to quality, when it comes to producing a clean, healthy, and a quality young plant material, then the importance of propagation media kicks in. Okay, so my goal today is to provide insights into different propagation media that is available in the industry, and help you to choose the right one based on your crop needs. Okay, so here are the quick contents. I'm going to talk about the introduction. Just want to give a quick introduction about Smithers Oasis Company, what we do here at Smithers. And actually, can you go back one slide, Chris? Yeah, thank you. Then we'll quickly touch the propagation media, role of different types of propagation media, general pros and cons of the propagation media, and then I will get into the real crux of this presentation. Mainly, I'm going to talk about three types of propagation media: engineered, stabilized, and bonded media, and focus on Terra Plugs, which is a new introduction to the market. With that, Chris, yes, thank you.
There we go. Now I'm on track.
Oh, wonderful, yes. So Smithers Oasis Company, again, Smithers is a global company with the manufacturing facilities, at 19 manufacturing facilities, and we have 9 research centers and 23 sales offices. And the company has primarily 3 business groups. If you see here at the bottom, first one is the floral products, the green foam, mainly for the cut flower arrangements for the florists, and then the Floral Life, the products mainly for the cut flowers and also for the plant distribution chain. And then the Grower Solutions, mainly dealing with the propagation media and so on, and I represent the Grower Solutions here. And then the last part of the business unit is the engineered products, which mainly deal with the specialized foam technology for temperature control management. Thank you. Very good. So quickly about the Grower Solutions. Again, in the industry, in 1969, Oasis is the first company to launch a preformed propagation media to the industry. I think with that, actually, things got totally revolutionized the propagation industry, because people were able to ship rooted liners all over the country in the United States and outside the country also. That was the first propagation media, which is the foam Rootcubes media, as you see here at the bottom, was introduced in 1969. And since then, several specialized media have been introduced. But again, the mission here at Smithers is we're specialized in propagation media and to provide new solutions, new product to the industry for the growers to produce better plants and improve their efficiencies. Okay. And the products mainly include the premium growing media, fertilizers, post-harvest products, improving the quality of the cuttings and the potted plants and so on, and also the cleaners and disinfectants. Okay. So major methods of propagation. Again, of course, if you are sitting here in this seminar, I don't think anything is new for you here, but just I wanted to throw this very quickly that I'm going to touch on each and every topic that is presented here about seed propagation and vegetative propagation, production of liners, and also tissue culture production. By the way, just a small side note, I think I spent most of my out of the college, I spent a lot of time on geraniums. Probably I spent maybe 8 to 9 years just studying extensively on geraniums, understanding the carbohydrates and relation between rooting and the post-harvest performance, like yellowing. So the total interaction between carbohydrates, the hormones, and the adventitious rooting, and also the leaf senescence, leaf yellowing, leaf drop, and so on. So anyway, just a small side note. I can spend hours on this topic, and probably I can blow up my whole presentation, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. Just move on to the next slide.
Actually, Vijay, we should probably plan a seminar on a webinar on geraniums next spring.
Oh, that sounds
there
good.
That
sounds good. Yeah. And it's funny that my whole PhD thesis for 4 years I worked on one cultivar, Isabel, one cultivar. So,
all right. If anybody's growing Isabel geranium, his phone number will be at the end. You can call and chat for hours. All right. Go ahead, Vijay.
Yeah. So, role of propagation media. Okay. So, what is the role of propagation media? Basically, to provide some physical support and create an optimal air and water ratio for the seeds to germinate, cuttings to propagate, and the tissue culture propagules to produce some roots. Okay. So, to provide nutrients, and also it acts as a holding and shipping of the young plants. and also helps with the facilitates the sorting and the transplant automation. So, one thing we always forget is, at least I used to think that when I was early in the school, it's all about roots, right? You want to propagate a plant, you look at the beautiful roots. Wow, beautiful roots. Actually, at the end of the day, beautiful roots doesn't make money. What is really important is to produce that young plant with beautiful roots, and you should be able to transplant it, and without any transplant shock, the plant should survive, should thrive once you transplant that. So that's the key thing. So although the role of the propagation media is there, but when you're picking and choosing the propagation media, there might be several other factors that might play a role when you are choosing that. Okay, so today I'm going to focus mainly on the preformed media. Basically, if you look at propagation media, you can divide into two categories. One is loose fill media. Loose fill media means it could be anything, peat-based, perlite, sand. You can use any of these materials to do propagation, okay? So it is, of course, it is cheap, inexpensive, but what is the problem is, over a period of time, the media settles. That results in the compromisation of air-water porosity, and the cuttings may not root out uniformly, and that may take a longer period of time to root and to transplant. Okay, and also sometimes with the loose fill media, if you're trying to transplant early on, you will end up disturbing the roots, and they will have a hard time taking off once they're transplanted. And also the other thing is that the automation again, it's not always the case, but again, definitely it plays a major role with loose fill media. If they're transplanting too soon, that will affect the transplant performance and the quality of the young plant material. On the other side, preformed media, these are preformed plugs that are ready to use, generally structurally stable. What does it mean is the air-water porosity doesn't compromise during the course of propagation or production, okay? And the transplant shock, after you transplant the young plant material, the transplant shock is going to be very, very minimal, and it also helps with the shipping and transplant automation if you're using a preformed media. So under preformed media, broadly you can categorize into three different types. One is engineered media, and the second one is a stabilized media, and the third one is bonded media. Engineered media, for example, here I put as Oasis Rootcubes, but again, rock wool could fit in the same category, right? And stabilized media, FERTISS, which is a paper plug. Again, there are several other paper plugs that are in the market, like Elipots and other paper plugs that are in the market. And bonded media, Terra Plug, but there are several other bonded medias in the market, like Preformed and a Quick Plug and so on and so forth. But I wanted to make one thing very, very clear, okay? These three, although these are lumped under preformed media, these engineered media, stabilized media, and bonded media, these three are totally different. They are made differently. They're also made for specific purpose, right? For example, at our house, it's all about cars, right? So I always want to put in the context of cars. So, like for example, engineered media, let's say it's like a race car, okay? Stabilized media, maybe it's an all-terrain car or whatever. So you can't use interchangeably, depending on what your needs, what your plant needs, and depending on what your automation requirements, you have to pick and choose one or the other. So you will hear from me again and again, basing on what your needs, what your crop needs, what your requirements in the greenhouse, you have to pick and choose one or the other. Okay, on to the next one. Thank you. So under the engineered media, I'm going to talk quickly about the Rootcubes, which is mainly for propagation of cuttings, and then Horticubes for propagation of seedlings, and then the In Vitro Express, quickly talk about the tissue culture. Okay, so quickly about foam, it's a hydrophilic, it's a cellular foam made with liquid ingredients, and when it reacts, it forms a solid. Here is a close-up section of foam, okay? It's a cellular level. So designed with ideal air-water ratio and available in different densities and drainage characteristics to meet the specific demands of the propagation. Okay, for example, we have Rootcube, mainly designed for vegetative propagation, right? It's higher density, lower drainage. Horticubes, it's lower density, mainly designed for propagation of seed material. Horticubes ES, by the way, this is, again, we are the first one in the industry to launch a biodegradable synthetic engineered media, which is the Horticubes. It will degrade 100% in about 16 months in active landfill situation. So again, different types of media for different applications. So in vitro express for tissue culture. Okay. So just wanted to touch on some highlights. Media will be, because it's an engineered media, it's going to be very, very consistent, promote uniform rooting. Okay, it's inert, free of pathogens, and it will not harbor any insects or pathogens during the course of propagation. For example, fungus gnats. The larvae, they can't feed on foam because it's like a plastic material. So the media is structurally stable. We already talked about this. And then allows for early and rapid transplant. And once it transplants, you can have a quick root establishment after it is transplanted. Okay? And it's also available in different sizes and shapes for offering maximum flexibility. Okay? So this is one of my favorite slides. I love this slide. Just quickly look at this. These are poinsettia cuttings stuck in foam strip, and on the right side, it is a strip filled with peat-based media. Both are fully saturated, and poinsettia cuttings, of course, you know that these are very, very sensitive to water stress. So we stuck these cuttings, and after sticking them, these did not go under mist system. We let them sit on a propagation bench without mist system. 6 weeks later, the poinsettia cuttings in the foam, they're all turgid. They took the water, and the foam strip is very light because the cuttings are able to take up the water. Whereas peat strip, it's fully saturated with water, but it's heavy, and it's not giving up water. So the take-home message, what I'm trying to say here is foam is really good with releasing the water to the cuttings. So the cuttings can take up water easily, and they can be hydrated. So this has a lot, for example, especially in the propagation environment, you can bring down your misting requirements soon enough so that you don't have to worry about diseases and pests and so on. So that's one of the advantages. But I love this slide because, again, this tells that I have heard a lot of from my growers that the foam is a propagator's dream media, especially on the front end on the propagation, because the cuttings establish much quicker in the foam compared to any other media.
Just a real quick clarification, Vijay. You said 6 weeks, but this was 6 days.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, 6 days. Yeah.
No problem. And a quick question, kind of going back to the 3 different types. For organic production, are any of the 3 products labeled or registered for organic use? Any of the 3 categories, or are we stuck with loose fill?
That is, at this point, no. That preformed media is there's no organic media at this point. That is correct. We're stuck with it. Yeah. So, Chris, there is somebody from about audio. I don't know if you want to quickly answer that. They're having audio problems, it seems. So, crop applications and recommendations. Herbaceous crops. Again, so these are some crops. Again. Foam is different. It is not simply like one more peat-based media. It's made for specific reasons. So these are some of the recommendations. You may not be able to use for everything, but some of the recommendations are it works extremely well for crops that are sensitive to water stress like poinsettias, or for softwood crops like hibiscus, mandevilla, roses, and so on. And also, if your crop is sensitive to any fungal diseases, foam might be the answer because foam is completely clean, sterile, like carnations, clematis. Dr. Faust did really good research on clematis with FOMA. There is a disease associated with that, and you can have beautiful propagated material in foam. And then the last thing is, I think this is really, really important. If we are looking to produce clean, disease-free stock material or elite stock, and foam might be the go-to media because it's clean, inert, and you can start with the foam material to get disease-free, clean stock material. Okay. Now, next slide. Again, just wanted to quickly hit on a couple of important points. Again, foam, when it arrives, it is dry. It's bone dry, right? So you want to deal with it differently because it is shipped bone dry. There's no water. You make sure that you're completely saturating the foam with complete fertilizer solution, and also make sure that there are no dry spots. If you're using the foam for the first time, water it thoroughly. Pull open the wedge or root cube, cut open, and make sure there is no dry spots within the foam. So there are some recommendations that if you're using a hose and a breaker, depending on the pressure, you can go 4 to 5 passes to completely saturate. And also you can use a sub-irrigation followed by overhead watering to do that. But the important thing is that never stick a cutting when the foam is dry. Make sure the foam is 100% saturated. And also it is not required to maintain water reservoir at the bottom of the strip. Let the excess water drain out. And also the last thing is that once it is saturated foam, don't let it ever dry again, because if it dries again, you may have a hard time re-wetting it. So those are some of the important things you want to pay attention on. One more on the recommendations. Again, because its foam is soft, a lot of people tend to stick the cuttings too deep. It is very important to stick the cutting not more than half the height of the propagation media. If it is 5 centimeters, don't stick more than 2.5 centimeters in depth, because it is sitting in the saturation zone. It may never root out. So make sure you're sticking straight, and make sure you're not sticking more than half the depth of the foam height, the propagation plug, when you're inserting your propagation media. I always tell my growers that use your thumb and index finger to position your cutting and stick it until your thumb and index finger touches the foam, at least until you get a hang of that material. Once you get that, you should be fine. Okay. And then I think this is the last slide on Rootcubes wedge. That the important thing is a lot of people get wrong here, because again, as I said, I keep on repeatedly saying you're using foam for specific applications, and it's not like any other peat-based media. So you need to follow certain recommendations especially on the transplant. If you're transplanting into a container, it's not a big issue. You make sure you're watering the foam plugs before you're transplanting, and also make sure you're transplanting into a moist media. After you transplant it, thoroughly water, and after that you don't have to water them repeatedly, just water as required. Okay, typically what happens is immediately after you transplant, water moves out of the foam into the surrounding matrix, and actually roots follow the same pattern, and roots will start growing into the surrounding matrix. Okay, and the other thing is that we have a lot of growers that are using foam-based media where the cut flowers are produced in Central America, in Africa, in India, and so on. One of my recommendation is that make sure that if you're transplanting into field soil, only it is recommended if you can control the irrigation. If you can't control the irrigation, if you can't keep your soil moist enough, I would not recommend to transplant, because foam works so well. And if you don't follow that simple step of keeping the media moist enough, it may not, all your effort may go waste. So make sure that you have proper drip irrigation installed so that you keep the moisture in the media, because as I said, the moisture immediately moves out of the foam into the surrounding matrix, and if the surrounding media is not moist enough, the roots may not survive. Okay?
Vijay, what would you do instead in that situation? What would you advise the grower? Use a stabilized media, or
that is
transplant into a pot first and root it on further?
Yeah, that can be done. But again, there are, I think, for example, in that case, maybe a bonded media might be much more applicable in that situation. That is an alternative if you can't control the irrigation procedures properly.
No, a bonded media would work in that situation. Okay,
yeah.
That's interesting.
But most of the times, what I have seen is, especially if you're doing cut flowers, a lot of people use drip irrigations. They do transplant into pumice or field soil, but they have drip irrigations installed. But what my emphasis here is, if you're used to peat-based media, don't exactly follow the same procedure, because you may have to water for the first couple of days a little bit more to make sure that the plugs are established properly.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, and quickly, I wanted to switch gears and talk about Horticubes media for hydroponic applications. Okay. Next slide. Yes, very good. So again, this is engineered exclusively for hydroponic applications, promote uniform and vigorous growth, and there is no buffering capacity. The advantage is that the growers can steer the propagation media in any direction they want. They can increase, they can decrease the pH. Initially, it comes with a 5 pH without any fertilizer. They can add the fertilizer of their choice, and they can adjust the pH. So once it's propagated in foam, you can transplant into an NFT system, nutrient film technique, or RAF system. It works in both systems. I'm not going to talk more about that, but just wanted to let you know that it could be used in either systems. Okay. So what are the crop recommendations? Pretty much all the leafy greens, you can see that lettuce, different types of lettuce, basil, watercress, arugula, spinach. You could do pretty much cucumber, tomatoes, peppers, anything in Horticubes or Horticubes XL or ES. Basically, the differences are the water holding capacity. There's more information available on the technical data sheets, but you could use any of those 3 types of foam depending on your requirements.
But as we touched on earlier, not if it's going to grow organic. Is that correct?
These are not for organic production.
Can you develop a product for Deke and company?
Yeah, we're working on that. Not there yet.
All right, a little sneak peek there for you, Deke.
Yeah, and I'll want to quickly introduce the plug and the block. Again, foam is available in the plug and the blocks for grafting applications for tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers. You can start in a plug and then transplant into a block. And like in rock wool, again, the foam, this is cellular foam. You can manage the rooting environment very effectively. You can adjust the water hold, because the foam is available with the different water holding capacities. You can easily manipulate the root zone environment to steer the plant more into generative, more into reproductive stage from vegetative stage. So you can play with that, and foam works extremely well for those applications. Okay, so a couple of quick tips on the hydroponic production if you're using Horticubes XLES. Initial watering, again, as I said, emphasized before, it is extremely important. Remember that you're dealing with a bone-dry material. Make sure that there are no dry spots. If you're just overhead watering, depending on the type of the drainage of the foam, the top might be wet and the bottom will be wet, and the center might be dry because the water runs through the least channel of resistance. So you may end up having dry spots. Make sure you don't have that, and definitely make sure you're watering with complete nutrient fertilizer solution. And for best results, the recommended procedure is float saturated followed by overhead watering with complete nutrient solution to ensure there are no dry spots and complete distribution of the nutrient solution through the propagation media. And also, one of the quick thing I want to touch is the push out. Sometimes there's, in the past, like 90% of the growers used to grow butterhead Rex. I'm glad that breeders are working hard and introducing a lot of new different types of lettuce varieties and other leafy greens. But the problem is some of the new varieties doesn't have a much profuse root system. They're not establishing very well. In that case, if you may have push outs, means the seedling will not establish very well in the foam. They want to start growing out. If you put a little bit of vermiculite on the top, that will control those push outs and totally avoid those push outs and help those seedlings to be fully established in the propagation media. Okay. So again, I have done a lot of work. At Smithers, I spend most of my research time on developing new propagation media. As you know, we have totally different types of all diverse propagation medias from peat-based bonded media and all that stuff. But I strongly recommend not to use a peat-based media for hydroponic applications. Because, earlier, as I said, it's not about just the roots. It's not about initial growth. You got to look at the full cycle, full long-term strategy of your whole greenhouse operation. Initially, you may have good growth, but over a period of time, what happens is the peat may start falling apart, settling at the bottom in the pond or NFT system, and starts acting as a breeding ground for these diseases, because at the bottom, the peat will start degrading and it will compete for the oxygen that is available there, and also starts growing some mold. Eventually, it will take off. So I have seen so many operations. If you're using a peat-based media, I would strongly encourage you to look for alternative, because it's a disaster waiting to happen at one time or the other. So, so for those reasons, again, there are like dry hydroponics and all that stuff. You can maintain certain distance between the media and water. You can create air gap, but still, even though they don't come in contact with water, because just peat, again, it allows the nutrients, the microbe starts growing and flourishing, and it will take off eventually. So my recommendation is not to use the peat-based media. Go after, look for some engineered synthetic media, foam or rock wool or something, but not the peat-based media.
Hey, Vijay, quick question.
Sure.
Going back one slide to the push-outs. Sherry
Yeah.
wants to know, if you have a push-out on other than the hydroponic media, would you also recommend vermiculite in the same way?
On the other crops or other...
Other media. Would you be doing seedlings in other medias other
Yes.
than hydroponic media?
Yeah. So definitely yes. So basically, it's not specific to propagation media, the push-outs. Of course, you may have more push-outs in one media than the other, but push-outs are quite common for different types of media. Yes, the answer is yes, you could use. The thing is that you make sure you're using proper particle size. You don't want to use extremely fine vermiculite, because it will, it will just get packed in that hole, and the seedling may have a hard time emerging out of that hole. So you want to use a medium grade, which is commonly used in the horticulture industry.
And either apply by hand or run it through a top dresser, like
that is
run
correct.
a plug tray.
That is correct.
Brush aside the excess. All right, there you go, Sherry.
Very good. Just want to, the next, switching gears a little bit, I want to touch quickly on the in vitro express for the tissue culture applications. Yes. So if you have ever done tissue culture, if you have used tissue culture, typically tissue culture plants, they can't make their own food. They need to rely on the carbohydrate, the sugars you are providing, and typically it's propagated on a gel, like a jello kind of. It's called agar. So what is happening is that once the tissue culture propagules are rooted, you typically, those are washed, because you want to get to wash all the sugars, because if you don't wash the sugars, they act as breeding grounds for, again, pathogens and all that stuff. So typically they are washed. When you're doing that, you end up breaking the roots and damaging the roots, and the transplant performance and the acclimatization may not be very, very, very good. So what is happening is agar not only creates that kind of inconvenience with the transplant, but also it can limit the water and nutrient availability during propagation. And also, as I said, when you're washing, you may end up breaking the roots, and once you break the roots, the problem is the plant will not immediately establish, and it will not acclimatize. It may take a longer period of time to establish. So here at Smithers, next slide please, Chris. So we have developed a foam-based propagation media. Basically what it is just it replaces agar. So you just exactly use the same nutrient formulation, same sugar amount, hormones, vitamins, and everything. And instead of agar, you use just the foam-based media. So you're doing a culture in liquid medium as opposed to doing a culture in a gel medium. Okay, so IVE, in vitro express, is inert, add liquid medium containing same nutrients and sugar and plant growth regulators except the gelling agent. So basically you're growing in the foam-based media. Next slide, Chris. Thank you. So here are some features and benefits of this. So because you're doing a liquid culture, you in an environment with ample oxygen, you will typically, a lot of times, again, of course, depending on the crop, you may see that rooting occurs in a well-aerated cell structure with ample oxygen, as I said. And so because of that, you will have superior root growth. And also, the most important thing is when you're transplanting, you're protecting the roots because you just separate these plugs and you're transplanting. So there is a minimal disturbance to the roots. So because of that, the last point, if you look at this, because the disturbance to the roots is minimal, the damage to the roots is minimal, the acclimatization or in the greenhouse is much faster, and sometimes in certain crops you can cut down the production time as high as 25%. This is talking to certain growers in Venus flytraps and so on. They have seen 25% reduction in the production time. But again, it may not be for every crop, but definitely we have seen on certain crops. And the other thing is that definitely because you're dealing with the stabilized media, you don't have to wash. You just flush the foam. You just flush the sugars out of the foam, and the plugs are ready for transplant. Okay, so what are the crop recommendations? Again, crop recommendations: Echinacea, hellebores. These are a couple of crops I put in. We have seen a lot of success with, and there are other crops like gerberas definitely can be used. And ornamental crops, if you are growing elite stock, again for vegetative annuals or perennials. So IVE, In Vitro Express, is one of the things you want to check it out because there is significantly, it will help with the production efficiency and also the transplant performance, the acclimatization in the greenhouse. It can be also used on a wide variety of fruit and nut crops, like for the rootstock material for grafting, for almonds, cherries, plums, and so on and so forth. So it can be used for wherever you are doing tissue culture. This is for stage 3, where you're rooting out. It's not for stage 2. You typically it will do your stage 2 multiplication stage on whatever method you're using. If it is a liquid culture, if you're using a bioreactor or in an agar-based system, you will do that. But when you're rooting out for the stage 3, then you would use the foam-based media to root them out. Okay, and works well for plantation crops like bananas, forestry crops, medicinal crops, and so on and so forth. Okay, just a quick rundown. Don't want to spend too much time on this, but it's very simple to use. Instead of just this foam will replace agar, add the rest of the media with liquid sugars and nutrients, exactly the same thing. Run through the autoclave. Once it cools down, start your culture. Introduce your stage 3 propagule and root them out. And after 3 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever the propagation time is, it is ready for transplant. You flush the sugars out of the foam, and then it's ready for transplant. So it's very simple and straightforward. But again, definitely when you are dealing with liquid culture, if you are used to do gel culture, and if you're switching to liquid culture, you need to do some experimentation on optimizing the media volume to see what is the optimal media volume for your specific crop. Okay. Then switching gears and talking about FERTISS plugs. This is the stabilized media. Next slide, Chris. So basically, stabilized media, what I'm trying to say here is the peat or peat perlite mix or whatever other materials you wanted to use with your propagation media. It is stuffed into a non-woven fabric, and the fabric is wrapped around into a plug. And basically, you're just stabilizing the propagation media. Okay. So, for example, in this case here, it's FERTISS. It's wrapped in the white one is wrapped in a plant paper. its plant paper is 100% natural, bio-based, and it is industrial compostable. And the FERTISS plugs are is made by gravity feeding. Basically we can adjust the density of this propagation plug. You will not have densification, and it works extremely well, especially if you're dealing with a soft material and so on. And you can see that plant paper, this is from Europe. We partner with Plant Paper, and they have a lot of the certification from different organizations for it's 100% natural and bio-based, and it's also the compostability of the material. Yep. So it's reduced plug. It's made by gravity feeding, so the plugs are loose, especially if you're dealing with tissue culture material, soft stem. You will see definitely a benefit with this, because you can insert without straining the shoot material. And it's the wrap is 100% bio-based, biodegradable, and these are made filled in unique trays. There is space around each of these plugs which promote air pruning, especially if you are dealing with a crop which has profuse root system. This helps, the air gap helps with air pruning, and it can help get more fibrous root system rather than fully root-bound plug. So it works well for slow-to-root cultivars, and it you can works with the transplanters and so on. And you can also ship the young plants rooted in FERTISS. Okay, so yeah, here are the examples. You could do pretty much everything, but again, as I said, at the end of this presentation, I would like to summarize, to help you to choose the right propagation media. But you could do pretty much every propagate all different types of material in FERTISS as well.
If you use an organic fill soil, and because this is a bio-based product, would it be considered organic in this case?
In this case, you could go with an organic material, but this is not organic certified paper. This is very tricky, Chris. If there is, although this is fully plant-based material, if there is any synthetic process that is involved in the manufacturing process, that is not considered as a certified organic. So that's the challenge with that. But this is not as certified organic. Thank you for bringing up the organic. Again, there is definitely a lot of interest on that, and we don't have much on the organic in this presentation today.
It says organic farming systems don't have to use certified organic plugs. It just can't contain any prohibited materials. So
again, I think the rules are still not well. The regulations are still developing. There's a lot of local certifications. There are people that have can argue that this propagation material is only a container and they can use it. And in the past, there was instances they have used different synthetic media for organic production. But later on, if the rules are changing, may be different in your location. So I would refer to your local authorities and local regulations to see what will fit into your specific requirements to use one or the other.
Right. I guess we'd have to ask: does the paper have to be OMRI listed? In
Correct.
other words. And well, that's a topic for yet another webinar. Yeah. So we better move on here.
Yeah. Yes, and the last topic of this presentation is the Terra Plug. And the Terra Plug, this is a new bonded media in the industry. Bonded media is not new to the industry, but there is definitely a lot of interest for the bonded media because the things are changing. Everybody's looking for more efficiency, more quality, and all those things. So over the last few years, there's several new bonded medias that are introduced to the market globally. At least I would say that over the last 4 or 5 years, at least 3 to 4 new bonded medias are introduced to to the industry. Again, every bonded media, although I'm lumping all the bonded media under one category, they may not be necessarily the same. There might be subtle differences which can create significant differences in how the plant material will perform and how it will react in your system and so on. But anyway, I'm going to talk about the bonded media now. So Terra Plug, it's made with peat and cocoa fibers. The Terra Plug is made by loose filling the media into the propagation trays, then bonded using a unique horticultural friendly technology. So there is no rigorous mixing. It's just it's gravity fed into the trays, and it goes through a special patented technology that will create this bonded media. And also this the Terra Plug has a patented technology that will allow the plugs to be released easily without roots are in the media attaching to the trays. And it comes with a starter chart. So you can see that here's the Terra Plug. The beauty is that you can maintain the natural structure of this fiber. Okay, thank you. So yeah, as I said, it keeps the original structure of the media. There again, as I said, there are different things, different media for different requirements. But there is, if you look at, if you're a propagator by yourself, there is no, in general, if everything goes well, if disease is not a concern, there is no better media than a loose fill media because it's natural. You will have beautiful roots. But the problem is with loose fill media, you will end up compromising the physical properties of the media over a period of time when you're watering and so on. And this Terra Plug, the beauty of this is it will maintain the natural structure. It will not collapse. You're just loose fill the tray, and we will stabilize that plug in its natural format. So the technology is very plant friendly, and it's not toxic, easy extraction, and you could use for manual and automated transplant, and the fast and uniform rooting development of strong fibrous roots, and it's ready to use with ideal moisture content. And the bonding technology allows for customized sizing of the plugs, of course, depending on what crop and so on and so forth. But in general, it allows for customized sizing. Reduced bench time because the rooting is faster, and it will allow for you to transplant sooner. The plugs do not shrink during the course of propagation, easy to rewater, and this is mainly made for automation purpose, keeping automation in the mind. Yeah, thank you. So just wanted to emphasize again, if a close-up shot of this, you can see the fibrous, the coconut cocoa coir fibers. It's very natural, maintain the natural attributes of the material that is being used. So because of that, you can have a beautiful root system, which will make money because if you transplant, you will perform, the transplant performance is going to be beautiful because you have a healthy root system with fibrous roots and so on. And you can see all these secondary roots that are coming out of this. Just wanted to emphasize on this, the natural structure, maintaining and then encouraging the natural roots that you would see. So quick thing is that, for example, ivy geraniums, these are easy to root, not a problem. But the problem with this ivy geraniums is once they're rooted, the roots tend to stick to the tray because I'm not exactly sure what the roots secrete, but definitely they attach to the tray. Again, with the Terra Plug, with this patented technology, you can extract these rooted plugs without any issue. Even you can see here, it's although very well rooted, sometimes you can end up breaking the root, but with Terra Plug, it's easy to extract. Next slide, please. So what are the applications? You could do pretty much everything: flowering plants, annuals, perennials, food crops, tree crops, and so on. And so the crop applications, the crops and the applications are wide variety. You could do pretty much everything with this new system. Yeah. So here are some of the trials that were done. This is done with Tagawa in Colorado with Randy Tagawa and Will Healy and so on. And you can see that these are the plugs that with the different vegetative annuals, euphorbia hybrids, Coleus, Calabracova, Osteospermum, so there's wide variety, beautiful roots, and cuts down the propagation time and ready to be transplanted faster. Okay, and also just wanted to touch on very quickly a couple of new things. Although it is not very popular in the United States, probably the grafted seedlings that are transplanted into the field in the United States or North America is probably less than 1%, or maybe close to 1%, not more than that. But if you go to Asia, mainly like Korea, Japan, or Europe, Spain, 90% of the seedlings that are transplanted in the field are grafted, because of obvious benefits of that. So here are some of the trials that were conducted at Ball, Korea in 2017 and Acrina in Spain. On the left side, you have the grafted material in the loose fill, and also on the right side, you have Terra Plug. Works well for the transplant into the field. When they were the rootstock material were propagated in Terra Plug, they were 1 week ahead compared to the loose fill, and they're ready for grafting. And also in general, they were ready by a week before to be transplanted into the field. So you can significantly cut down the bench time, and you can transplant them then sooner, and you can raise a beautiful crop in the field. And also works very well for watermelon grafts. Again, watermelon grafts is a little bit different from tomato grafts because you are, in case of tomato grafts, you're rooting onto a rootstock which is rooted, but in the case of watermelon, you take the cutting out of the rootstock and you graft the scion onto the top, and then you will reroot that rootstock. And here is the control on the left side, that is loose fill and the Terra Plug. And this is after 5 days after the plant material is rooted, stuck into the propagation media, and you can see the roots are fully established, and it's almost ready to transplant. But anyway, it's almost in both tomatoes and watermelon cucurbits. The transplant time is 1 week earlier compared to the controls. And last but not the least, again, you could if you're a nursery grower, you know how hard it is to get a good strike rate, get propagation rate on woody crops like nursery crops. Typically, perlite sand or just sand is used. So it also, of course, it depends on the shoot material you're using to root, but it has a lot to do with the propagation media. The woody crops doesn't like wet feet. They don't like a lot of moisture. But you can see that these are rooted. These are the trials that were conducted at Willoway in Ohio by one of our territory sales manager, Eric Prechtel, and they have beautiful, almost 95% or higher than 90% strike rate with these woody crops. Here it's boxwood and then mops, and compared to the control, it's less than 50% in the case of control with perlite and sand-based material. So the applications are of you could use for a wide variety of crops and for a wide variety of applications. Okay. And there's just quickly, it's the plugs comes with 70% moisture content. You can just water with the hose and a breaker or a sprinkler, and the plugs are ready to use. No extra procedures are required. Okay, last slide. Okay, this is again going back to my earlier message. Okay, all these are three different categories under preformed media: engineered media, stabilized media, bonded media. These are made to be performed differently, made for different applications. So a lot of times I have heard people saying that, oh, this is foam, it ain't dirt. Yes, if I'm using a little colloquial language, it's what I mean. It is not dirt. Basically, yes, it is not dirt. It is a synthetic material. It is made for specific applications. It is mainly meant for if you want to grow a clean crop, disease-free, if you have concerns about disease and so on, you want to use a synthetic media for hydroponic applications, for elite stock production, or if a crop that is sensitive to water stress, foam-based media is recommended. If you're just for regular propagation, if you're using a soft plant material, if you want to stick and so on, a stabilized media is good. It works very well as long as your specific crop is not affected by the fabric of this non-woven material for the root penetration and so on. And the last one is the bonded media, again for fast rooting, improving efficiency, for shipping long distances, for transplant automation, for grafting and transplanting into the field. This would be one crop one system that is recommended. So I believe that is my last slide, and thank you. That
brings us up to the end. Now, before I go on to the Q&A, and we've got several here, so hang on just a second. Wes and Kaylee and Caesar and everybody, you've got a special offer here, a trial pack. Tell us about this real quick, Vijay.
Yeah, so our sales team at Oasis, they put together a trial pack. So if you're interested, reach out to this OasisGrowerSolutions.com Terra Plug, and they can send you all the information and material for you to trial. Definitely our salespeople. We have global salespeople located in each continent, and you can reach out to your local salespeople also to get more information. But the central location is Oasis.com, GrowerSolutions.com, Terra Plug, to request your material.
All right, very good. And just for everybody, you too, Vijay, if my voice starts to get a little scratchy or echoey or something weird happens, it's because that always happens at about this point in the webinar. I'm hoping it doesn't today. I tried something different, but just keep talking. Okay, let's see. Let's go to our Q&A slide here. We've got a couple of questions here. Let's see. Corn wants to know your Rootcubes and the other similar products, are they available in different absorbing capacities or air water capacities based upon what you're producing or where you're producing it? Or are they?
Yeah, so the answer is, again, a couple of things. The Rootcubes, again, these are meant to be saturated quick. Within less than 30 seconds, they will saturate. But the difference is that they are available in different drainages. Some foams will hold more water than the other, depending on the application. For example, Rootcubes, which is meant for vegetative propagation, they will hold more water than the Horticubes, which are for seed propagation. But of course, you could use interchangeably if you have a crop that needs really dry environment around your root zone. You could end up you can use definitely a Horticubes, but make sure that doesn't dry out when you're transplanting. So the answer is yes, available in different drainages and different water holding capacities.
Okay. Wes, Terra Plugs now. How long can they be stored using older bulk and using all year or come in small batches?
Oh, Chris, now your voice is getting really interesting. I'm sorry I could not get that. So
hang on.
Yeah, or maybe yeah.
I'm gonna type it to you.
Yeah, sure.
Oh wait, if you can hear me now, how long can you store Terra Plug?
How long can I store what?
Terra Plug.
Oh, Terra Plug. Terra Plug can be stored for at least for 3 months. Again, depending on the storage conditions, if you store in a nice and in a controlled environment area, I mean, not directly exposed to the sun and not in a greenhouse, you can store it for at least 3 months. We are putting together a care and handling sheet and exactly how to store and all that stuff, but it should be good at least for 3 months, as long as the plugs are not dried out. I mean, if you're keeping them open, the plugs will dry out sooner. Then that's not a good way to store. But if you're storing in an original package, you have a good shelf life. But the thing is that with peat-based media, I want you to keep in mind that peat-based media, when they have fertilizer, they attract a lot of the microbes that are in your environment. If you are storing in a heavy traffic area where you have a lot of air movement, you may start seeing some mold growing on. But in general, if you're keeping in a nice isolated environment, that should be good for at least for 3 months.
All right. How's my voice now, Vijay?
It's much better. Wow.
Oh,
it's
thank
magical.
You talked right through my technical glitch there. Thank you. Kaylee wants to know, with bonded media technology, how about algae or pests like shore flies? More or less likely?
The bonded media technology, again, the rules that apply for loose fill will apply also here. So definitely the bonded media, you got to deal with your watering protocols, make sure you're not overwatering and all that stuff. But these are also very susceptible for algae, and because, if you have moisture that is there, sunlight, and nutrient rich, it's act as a beautiful breeding ground.
Would that apply to all the propagation media, root cubes and everything?
No, again, cubes, that, as I said, bonded media is the one I'm talking about, but foam-based media, it doesn't support algae growth and all that stuff. Of course, it depends on your watering procedures. If you are watering with fungals, with these algae contaminated, then you will have algae growing on. And of course, also, if you are overwatering, if you are maintaining too much water at the bottom, that will promote algae growth. If you let it dry in between, not bone dry, but if you go through like just wet and dry cycles, that might help the algae to dry out. But it all depends on your watering procedures and protocols.
All right. Let's see. Another foam question here. When rooting clematis, what's the difference in rooting structure compared to clematis rooted in loose fill?
So, good question.
You have experience with them.
Yeah. So the root structure, again, the foam, again, the foam will not change the root structure. What will change the root structure is your watering protocol. If you are letting the foam sit in water, or if you're overwatering, you will end up having water roots. If you are watering as required, going through wet and dry cycles, if you're a dry grower, you will have fibrous root growth. And we have seen, even with poinsettias and any other crop, again, of course, clematis, you have a much more woody root to begin with. I have a beautiful photo. I wanted to put it, but I have forgotten to do that. But you will have normal root growth as long as you're following your proper watering protocols. Means what I mean to say is, if you're not going too wet, you will have good root growth like you see in a peat-based media.
Okay. Caesar asked a question, and everyone is thinking, what about the cost? What's the difference between the three different products / categories?
You know what? I'm a technical guy, and I'm a technical consultant. If you have your questions, definitely reach out to our sales and marketing business people. They would be.
But you have to know something, though. Come on, 5% higher, 10% higher, 10% less for foam. You got to have a ballpark anyway.
Yeah. Definitely, I can give that. I think roughly, depending on the crop, I mean, these are going to range between 2 to 3.5 cents in between, or something like that. The bonded media Terra Plug is more expensive than the FERTISS media. In general, I think by 5% or 10%. But other than that, I mean, those should be within 10%, 20% ballpark. And foam and the Terra Plug are comparable in cost and the pricing.
But when you think about the time you invest in the bench space to get something to root, if 10% of your stuff doesn't take, you just paid for you could have paid for the better product with what you lost.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. I mean, there's one thing is rooting uniform, and definitely the other thing is that rooting is one thing that is a big term to use, right? But consistent rooting and uniform rooting is the key in this plant factory, I would say, because when we are doing this large-scale operation, we are operating like in a factory, kind of say everything needs to be ready at the same time so that it's all, it all can be transplanted. You can turn over the bench and so on. So it's all about the uniformity and the quality there.
Yeah, it's not about the roots. It's about the finished product, as you say.
Yeah.
Bonnie wants to know what you would recommend for direct sowing of vegetables for shipping.
Wants to know, did not get that question.
What would you recommend for direct sowing of vegetable seeds that will then be shipped in that same medium or in the trays of that medium?
Direct sowing, then eventually that will be transplanted into hydroponic system or into the field.
Well, she didn't say that much.
But direct sowing, I'm also a little confused. I mean, are they sowing something in a different system before there's transfer?
Well, maybe that's one. Bonnie, I'll tell you what, if you're still on the line, you can email Vijay directly or even call him up. I'm going to give you his phone number in the next slide, and then you guys can hash this one out. I don't suppose that's Bonnie from Bonnie Plant Farm. No, it's not. Let's see. What would you recommend for olive cuttings? What type of propagation media? And I know one of them is good for woodies.
Recently I was in Spain, and the first time I saw an olive garden, really literally it's an olive world. It's millions of cuttings, and one of the two things they're trialing is Terra Plug and foam, and they're having beautiful results with Terra Plug and also with the foam, but they're still in the process of finalizing which one. I would, from what I have seen, Terra Plug works very well.
There you go. And for someone, Laura, I put the sample request URL back up there for all of you. We'll do a couple more here, and then we'll have to move on and wrap things up. Don wants to know about disposing of the engineered plugs. Can you compost them? Do they go in the trash? Are they plastic? What's going to happen?
Yeah. So, for example, again, we have two types of media. One is our standard media, which is not biodegradable. It is mechanically degradable. It turns into dust. It turns into microplastic over a period of time. But the other one we have, the most recent one we launched, is the ES, Ecologically Sustainable Product. What that is, you can actually put in your landfill and it will biodegrade within 16 to 18 months, completely 100% biodegradable. So if that is the product you're using, you can just put it in the soil or the landfill. But the standard one, again, depends on how much material it is. If it is just a lettuce cube here and there, then it's fine. But if you want big cubes or blocks and slabs, that's something that needs to go to the landfill.
All right, and I think the rest of the questions should probably be handled directly because they're going to take a bit of a detailed answer, I think, and I might not quite understand the question myself. So if you've got more questions, and you do, jot this down, Vijay Rapaka, PhD, and there's his email address, vrapaka@smithersoasis.com, and his office phone, or is this your home phone? Cell phone. Catch him 24/7, but not today. It's his son's birthday, so don't bug him this afternoon because he owes him big. After,
right, my son is under control of my phone today.
I bet you're taking him out for tikka masala, though, aren't you? After seeing that picture, there's his phone number right there. And again, you can go back to this webinar, get those emails and phone numbers and URLs and things at growertalks.com/webinars, and it should be up within an hour or so. So all of that said, one last thanks to your boss, your employers, Oasis Grower Solutions, for making this webinar possible. It was fascinating. And Vijay, we already did have somebody say they'd love to hear one on geraniums. So tell the bosses there at Oasis what's coming for 2018. Well, anyway, that's pretty much all we've got time for. But for Vijay and the fine folks at Oasis, and for all my peeps here at Ball Publishing who work hard so I don't have to, although I will tell you they're downstairs right now at the Marketing and Ball Publishing Christmas party, which I'm missing. So I'm going to run down there and stock up on stuff. Anyway, I'm Chris Beytes saying so long, everybody.